On November 26, 2021, LSE admitted that it did not have Tsai Ing-wen's Viva report. After that, the University of London stepped in and weighed in on the ThesisGate scandal. Before that point, over the past 3 years, the University of London deferred all inquiries about Tsai's degree to LSE's website statement. However, as more information came to light, people began wondering, if LSE did not have Tsai Ing-wen's Viva report, then how could LSE have published a statement saying she had a PhD and a thesis that was sent into the school's library? LSE legal team head Kevin Haynes refused to disclose who published LSE's statement. Then, ThesisGate investigators took to whatdotheyknow.com to ask the University of London why it referred people to LSE's statement when LSE did not have Tsai's Viva report. It looks like LSE has abandoned ship. The University of London has no choice but to step in and help Tsai Ing-wen sustain her lie. In February 2022, University of London released a statement on missing thesis, which once again said the school granted Tsai Ing-wen a proper degree. However, the school wasn't sure what became of her thesis. Tsai Ing-wen and the University of London have underestimated the will of ThesisGate investigators. On what grounds should people believe LSE and University of London when the two schools have given contradictory information? In today's show, we will continue to unravel the University of London and Tsai Ing-wen's many lies and secrets. Long before LSE admitted it did not have Tsai's Viva report, one nameless person started looking into LSE's website statement. That brave soul took to the University of London's Board of Trustees and asked them to clarify the university's relation to the LSE statement. They made several requests, which included providing itemized records regarding Tsai's degree award, providing emails, meeting minutes, phone records, and CCTV camera footage related to the University of London and LSE's efforts to confirm Tsai Ing-wen's degree, providing past records that document Tsai's thesis' circulation in the Senate House and Institute of Advanced Legal Studies libraries, providing details of who exactly sent Tsai's thesis into the school's libraries, providing copies of Tsai's application to obtain her student record from September 4, 2019. The scope of what was requested was very broad and included information that the University of London may not have had access to or was protected behind privacy laws. In regards to those concerns, the ICO made a ruling on September 3, 2021, ordering the University of London's board to respond to the request partially within 35 days. The University of London divided its files in response to this request into two categories, Type A and Type B. At the same time, it had to redact certain information to protect the privacy of certain individuals, but at the same time, it'd have to leave enough information in to address the presented concerns. Type A files include correspondence between LSE and the University of London that discussed why the schools could not find Tsai Ing-wen's original documents. Type B files include correspondence between LSE and the University of London that discussed publishing LSE's website statement. The ICO warned the University of London that failure to comply with this request would be viewed as non-compliance with a court order. Interestingly, the ICO's ruling, which was conducive to ThesisGate investigation efforts, was achieved with the assistance of ICO Senior Case Officer Roger Cawthorne. He was also attached to the vital case from November 26, 2021, that ultimately revealed that LSE did not have Tsai Ing-wen's Viva report. That very same month, University of London Data Protection and Information Compliance Manager Kit Good left his post after nearly 11 years on the job. Was he worried about impending retribution? On September 19, 2021, a person named Charles Lin inquired about the ICO's ruling on whatdotheyknow.com. Lin said that he thought information the ruling revealed should be made public and not just given to the complainant. Otherwise, the complainant could distort the truth by manipulating what they knew. On January 28, 2022, a Mr. Chang made a similar request. He hoped the University of London could make the information it had on hand public. If the school refused, he would take the same measures the original complainant did in order to get his hands on it. On February 23, 2022, University of London's Information Governance Officer Emily Brick shared 5 files which detailed events between 2011 and 2020. Brick stated that the university didn't typically share its Freedom of Information Act correspondence, but it made an exception in regards to the September 3rd ICO ruling. The University of London, of course, isn't worried about selective publication of its information because it already carefully curates what it reveals. The 5 files are no different. How do we know that the University of London selected the information it chose to publicize? Because of one file that Emily Brick posted to whatdotheyknow.com, a file which examined why Tsai's thesis couldn't be found, which was sent on July 13, 2011, 3:04 p.m. It was an email from LSE's Research Degrees Unit. The email said the school found Tsai's student record in its archives. We've already talked about how Tsai Ing-wen and her confidants manipulated the LSE archives to establish the precedent that her student record existed. That record included many unsigned documents. There's also the matter of Tsai Ing-wen's lawyer, Lian Yuanlong, receiving documents from LSE's archive on September 4, 2019, just one day after he applied for them. Those stories cannot serve to legitimize the photocopy of Tsai Ing-wen's 1984 diploma. It's clear that someone at LSE's archive was cooperating with Tsai very early on. The provided email also says that Tsai registered at the school on a different date than is stated on a previously shown copy of her student record. Also, the degree award date differs from the University of London's stated conferment date of February 1984. If we look closely at the email, we see the subject line says, in response to Tsai Ing-wen. Why isn't Emily Brick willing to publicize the email chain in its entirety? Could it be that the first email in the chain puts Tsai in a bad light? Could it be that the University of London doesn't have any records on Tsai? Why was University of London asking LSE for information on Tsai as early as 2011? Furthermore, the subject line did not indicate Tsai was a PhD. That alone raises many questions. This email shows just how shoddy any information on Tsai at the schools is. The University of London didn't even bother indicating that she was a doctor. Is this why Brick didn't share with us the original email? With no substantiating evidence, this LSE email merely attempts to establish the precedence that Tsai's thesis was titled Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard Actions, and that she was given a degree on March 14, 1984. This email marks the beginning of the ThesisGate investigation. This email reveals a disturbing truth. LSE Law School says it does not have records on Tsai Ing-wen. The University of London clearly does not have Tsai's PhD records. The only origin point of anything resembling a record for Tsai Ing-wen is the LSE archive. However, archives are only meant for record keeping. They are not channels for verification. Anyone with nefarious intentions could easily insert records into an archive. However, the legitimacy of those records could never be properly tested. The LSE email failed to address why Tsai's thesis doesn't exist. On the same day the first email was sent at 4:27 p.m., the University of London librarian who originally wrote the email reached out to LSE librarian Maria Bell, asking them for clarification on why the school didn't have a thesis it should have had. The subject line on this email was Tsai Ing-wen, PhD, 1984. Guess the University of London wisened up to the fact that Tsai was a PhD. The writer even said, I looked at the National Index to Theses, which indicates that we did have an SHL copy once, but I still can't find a catalog entry. They said that the online catalog did not indicate any further information about whether it had been withdrawn or sent to LSE. At this point, the University of London is very interested in finding out why the thesis could not be found. Since LSE couldn't offer any help, the University of London librarian hypothesized that the thesis may have been recalled to LSE pending a controversy with the author's work. The University of London's librarian was very confident in their work performance. They didn't once raise question that the thesis was misplaced due to human error. They raised the possibility that the thesis was removed. However, the librarian admits that if that were the case, then it would at least be indicated in the thesis's file. There was no such note. While LSE remained quiet, the University of London librarian sent a follow-up email 5 days later on July 18, 2011 at 11:25 a.m. They continued to provide information and clues. They said that they tracked down the 1984 card output from the computer system, so they knew the school once had a copy on the shelf and online catalog. The Senate House Library even sent that copy to the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies. But IALS didn't have the thesis either, so they wondered if the award was queried and the copies removed from the catalog. The University of London librarian once again raised the possibility that the thesis was removed due to a query. However, if that was the case, they didn't understand why the entry in the electronic catalog still existed. The very next day, on July 19, 2011, 5:27 p.m., the University of London Research Degree Examinations sent an email providing an explanation. They said, "We have had the old file out of the archives. Our records show the candidate was awarded in February 1984. It also clarifies that we were chasing the examiners and the candidate's supervisor for the return of the examination copies up to 1.5 years after the award was issued. But there is no written entry to clarify whether or not they were received back. We still appear to have on file the green record form and the reproductions of thesis form that we would usually have sent to you with the theses. So, it may be that only one copy of the thesis, the spare third examination copy in those days, was sent to you sometime after the close of the examination. Once it was apparent to us that no headway was being made with obtaining the examiner's copies for you, we cannot be sure. We have no record on this file relating to the possibility of the award or thesis being withdrawn. I have also spoken with blank, and she states that she does not recall this thesis being withdrawn or the award revoked. Such things happen so infrequently, she feels she would have remembered, and the file would also be littered with appropriate notifications and signatures if that were the case. Yet another file pulled from archives. After this brief investigation in 2011, the research degree examinations put a plug in it. The series of files just discussed established a false pretense that Tsai wrote a thesis in 1984. In 2011, the research degree examinations pretty much accounted for 3 copies of Tsai's thesis. One was with her supervisor, one was with the examiners, and the other is accounted for with a record form from the school, which indicated that the library received a copy of her thesis. Those files made it seem like Tsai submitted 3 copies of her thesis to the proper authorities. But upon further inspection, we see that the emails are filled with problems and inconsistencies. First, the final clues that the research degree examinations gave all came from the school's archives. The email said that the records indicated that Tsai Ing-wen was awarded a degree in February 1984. However, the university archives very clearly said that it does not keep students' personal records or examination reports. How did the research degree examinations find such telling files in the archives if this was the case? Furthermore, the archives do not have the authority to verify student credentials. Second, if the archives do not hold student records, why would they have such detailed information on how school officials followed up with her examiners up to 1.5 years after her date of award to track down her thesis? Would that information not belong in a student record, which wouldn't be kept in the school archives? Third, if the school has information on following up with Tsai Ing-wen's examiners, then that must mean it knows who Tsai's examiners are. There must clearly be records on that. Why then, in 2022, does the University of London continue to defer inquiries into Tsai's examiners to LSE? Fourth, the research degree examinations said that they had the record form and reproduction of thesis form, which would have been sent to the Senate House Library in conjunction with Tsai's thesis. This hints that the Senate House Library did indeed receive a copy of Tsai's thesis. But the Senate House Library never said it received Tsai's thesis or such forms attesting to the submission in earlier correspondence with investigators. Research degree examinations provides contradictory information. Looking at the earlier email from LSE's research degree unit from July 13, 2011, it's clear that the 2 departments are creating a cover for Tsai. The first series of emails Emily Brick shared on whatdotheyknow.com merely substantiates that Tsai's thesis was gone or it flat out didn't exist by 2011. However, conspirators would need to get even more creative if they were to convince the public that a 1984 thesis actually existed. If the school's archive files are to be trusted, then why is it that University of London's archive says Tsai was awarded her degree in February 1984, while LSE claims she was awarded March 14, 1984? It's no wonder that LSE's website statement says, "We can be clear the records of LSE and the University of London, the degree awarding body at the time, confirm that Dr. Tsai was correctly awarded a PhD in law in 1984. The schools couldn't agree on an exact month when Tsai graduated." We can deduce that the University of London administrators suspected the legitimacy of Tsai's degree early on. However, those suspicions were smacked down using archival files, which obstructed further inspection into the matter. Though Tsai's thesis concerns managed to disappear from public concern in 2011, conversation about it once again came back to the public eye during her second run for president. On June 24, 2015, 10:03 a.m., LSE Library sent an email to Senate House Library. The letter said, "A thesis indexed in ProQuest has been requested from us. We unfortunately do not have a record of this thesis in the library. I have also been looking in the Senate House catalog and have been unable to locate a thesis by this author. From my experience, the Senate House Library still keeps a record of the theses they held from LSE students, but with a note saying it has been returned to the institution. I have checked our alumni database, and I can confirm that Tsai Ing-wen did graduate with a PhD in law in 1984. This query is quite urgent. The author in question is the leader of a Taiwanese political party and is running in the upcoming elections. She is receiving a lot of publicity, and consequently, we have been contacted multiple times in the past 2 days. If you could email or phone me by the end of the day just so I know that someone is looking into this, that would be wonderful." A Senate House Library official responded to this email at 11:19 a.m. on the same day, saying, "I have done a bit of research for you and can confirm that we have no record of the thesis on our online catalog. However, we do have an old card catalog covering theses from the 1980s, and there is a card for this one which indicates that we were due to receive this thesis, but it never arrived. Unfortunately, no reason was given regarding its non-receipt, which is not much help. The thesis does not appear to be on the British Library Ethos service either. You could try contacting blank to see if anybody there can help you." The LSE librarian then sent an email to the University of London's transcript office at 11:26 a.m., notifying it that there was a problem locating Tsai Ing-wen's degree. The transcript office responded at 2:28 p.m., saying, "I have checked on our system. It shows that Ing-wen Tsai was awarded the PhD degree in 1984 at LSE. We used to have Higher Degrees Office in charge of taking care of all PhD awards. This office does not exist anymore. My understanding is that all queries which were meant to be directed to this office are now being handled by blank. Therefore, it will be best if you contact her." From these emails, we can see the University of London's attempts to cover for Tsai Ing-wen. This school already had Tsai's degree award records in 2011. In 2015, those records had already made their way to the transcripts office. The email chain in 2011 exposed that Tsai's records were in the school's archives and not the transcript office like they should have been. No other school department had such information. However, that mistake was rectified by 2015. The records were where they should have been, the transcript office. Interestingly, the transcript office seems hesitant to rewrite history, so it tossed the ball to a higher degrees office which previously existed. The transcript office said Tsai's information should have been kept there. But because the higher degrees office had since been dissolved, the transcript office could only speak to Tsai's degree award date. The overall message was that the transcript office did not have any real documents substantiating Tsai's degree. The transcript office couldn't even provide an actual name for the department it referred to, as if it was afraid someone would look into the matter further. They simply called the department a higher degree office. This proved once again that efforts to validate Tsai's degree have kept running into extraordinary circumstances. If the transcript office is telling the truth, then we need to point out that there was a problem with document transfers when the higher degree office was dissolved. Does that mean that all graduates from 1984, not just Tsai, had their files bungled? Is the transcript office's ability to verify graduates from 1984 boiled down to confirming award dates and nothing else? Or is Tsai Ing-wen the only one? The transcript office's explanation of events does not stand up to scrutiny. This email exchange only proves that the University of London is merely covering for Tsai. There are many takeaways from the two email chains from the University of London. There's simply not enough time in one episode to cover everything. However, it is imperative to go over all of the implications these emails contain. Next episode, we will continue to look at these email chains. The most important question is, why did Tsai Ing-wen go to LSE on June 7, 2011? Why did she visit David Held and Anthony Giddens? Furthermore, why did the University of London begin looking into her thesis shortly after her trip? Why did Emily Brick hide the first email from the 2011 email chain? If school libraries didn't have any information on the thesis, who was the first person to realize it was missing? More in-depth analysis will come in the next episode.